big changes are right around the corner. So in the psychic forecast, I'll explain why the world will undergo massive changes, peaking around September and October, when the Russia-Ukraine war may end and what's going on there, the future of the Trump presidency, as well as we'll talk about things like the new Madrid Fault possibly activating and the potential for a large earthquake right here in the Northeast or the East Coast, as well as some information on 3-eye atlas, space anomalies, extraterrestrial contact, and things like that. So there's a lot to talk about. Let's dive on in. I got my glasses. I've got everything written down in my notes. It's going to be a bumpy ride, so buckle up. But in a psychic forecast, I'll explain what we can do to soften the blows, basically. And really, it's just a matter of doing the best that we can to raise our vibrations. And what plays out now is really a reflection of what's going on in collective consciousness, plus a general upgrade in humanity. So we are ascending from the primitive human to the ascended human now. And of course, there's a lot of resistance to change and a lot going on with that. But in any event, we have the power to raise our vibrations through prayer, through spiritual growth and stuff like that. And that helps to raise the collective, and that can help to smooth out the transition from old earth to new earth. Change is inevitable. Things have to fall to be rebuilt again. But if we are able to raise the energies and vibrations, then it can happen more smoothly with a minimum of suffering. And what we've been seeing is that the prophecies have been validating, but they've been validating in a way that's not the worst case scenario. And I do believe it's because more people are waking up and adding more positive energy to the collective and softening the blow. So let's continue that, and we're going to be okay, basically. So moving right along, higher energies, new consciousness. We have help from guides, spirit, source, or God. So we have guidance in this transition. So be aware, not scared. We're going to be okay. So all eyes are on September and October. What the reason for that is September in numerology is a number 9 month. 9 is about completions and endings. And then October is a universal 1 month of new beginning. Couple that with some powerful astrological alignments. Eclipse season is in September. The 4 outer planet alignment that's harmonious and is sort of a representation of the upgrades of collective consciousness. That's still going to be very, very active. And new consciousness, new energies are going to be available to us, basically. So astrology, based on what's happened in history, astrology shows, based on the aspects, that a lot of big changes in geology and world structure is going to happen. And also through psychic sensing, through channeling, I'm getting validations of the same, basically. So let's start out with geology, weather, and climate. Then we'll dive into what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. I am aware that I'm filming this on the 18th. As I'm filming, the meeting with Zelensky and Trump and the representatives of the European Union and NATO are happening as we speak. So in any event, solar, okay, so where are we? US, Ukraine as well, okay. So we've got all that going on. So geology, so I did another video, and I'll put that on the end screen, where I detail things that are going on around the San Andreas Fault. I did that as part of the August forecast, cautioning people that we have to start to keep an eye on California fault lines starting in August. Now, that day or a day later, there's a 4.3 magnitude on or just off the San Andreas, but on the San Andreas system of faults, of fault lines, basically. So that was interesting. It was a minor earthquake, but it was the biggest one in 18 months. So perhaps the way psychic sensing works, I'm wondering if that's what I was picking up on, just that 4.3. In that case, we'll be fine. But I have a feeling there's something bigger that's happening, that's bound to happen. So just keep an eye on that, basically, is what I have to say about that. Also, we have to start keeping an eye on the Arcadia subduction zone, as well as around the Aleutians off of Alaska. So that area is likely to heat up again. And it does feel like, based on some of the solar activity that's going on, we're now in a high plasma stream from a coronal hole, basically, which is known to enhance earthquake activity. We have a lot of strong astrology, strong planetary alignments and geometry and angles, and a new moon coming up. So there's a lot of energy on the Earth now, and we could have a fairly major, impactful earthquake somewhere on the Earth, 7.0, 7.5, maybe higher, within the next few days. Not necessarily, but based on the changes of energies and what I'm sensing intuitively, as well as what science is saying, it's an elevated risk, basically. And we do have to keep an eye on the San Andreas. 1 second. Also, there could be unusual earthquake activity in New York, New Jersey. We've had a couple of tremors recently there, as well as the southeast of New York. The southeast coast, like near the Carolinas or Georgia, in that area. And the New Madrid that runs along the Mississippi, that's one to keep an eye on. Now, again, this is what's been coming up intuitively through channeling, but I learned recently that there is a warm blob under the earth in the, I guess, the upper mantle that is kind of descending, is that the right word, or moving out of the area around Greenland. It's going to kind of undercut like the northeast and eventually make its way to around the Mississippi, the new Madrid Fault. And this could be for a number of reasons, but we really don't know a lot about what goes on underneath the earth. There are currents, just like there's ocean currents and wind currents, but Earth is obviously more dense, so these currents move very, very slowly. And if these fault lines are unstable, you change the temperature below in the mantle, that could be just enough to trigger a fault line. So, and it's believed that and I have the date here, that the December 16th, 1811, there were 3 major eruptions on the New Madrid. That's the last time there was an eruption. Based on history of that fault line, I wouldn't say that we're overdue, but we're coming to that period where it's been a while and we have a lot of space weather. We've been in the solar maximum. There's been a lot of energy on the Earth and a lot going on, and there's been a general increase of seismic activity anyways. And it's said, and again, I look at different sources. I don't know if anybody would know what went on in 1811 as far as what was going on under the Earth, but it's at least speculated that a similar phenomena was happening. There were similar alignments astrologically. So keep an eye on that. When intuition and science are in agreement, keep an eye on it, basically. So the Earth is fluid. What did I write here? It may have similar Earth dynamics at 1811. And the Earth is fluid, so there are subterranean currents. They just move more slowly. Also, another major volcano can erupt soon. We've had a few. It's gone cooler out. That was part of the August forecast, that the Northeast and the Midwest of the United States would have kind of an earlier taste of fall. It's supposed to stay cool with a brief warm-up in about a week, but for most of the rest of August, it's supposed to stay cool, almost autumn-like. That could partly be because there's been so much volcanic activity. There may be a little bit of more ash in the stratosphere, though I haven't seen that anywhere. There could be plenty of other reasons why that's happening, but it's interesting that it came through in a past forecast and it's happening. But anyway, point being is that between Russia and other areas of the world, Indonesia and other places, there's been a lot of volcanism, basically, and I think another one. So cooler weather now invades the U.S. as predicted. So we talked about that. Very good. So there's more detail on climate in a recent video. Again, I'll put that up on the end screen as well. Now, so keep an eye on these areas. And also, I talked about New Zealand and other areas. The Italian supervolcano as well as the Yellowstone showing signs of more activity, though I don't think a major eruption's about to happen, which would be catastrophic if it did. But there's a lot to keep an eye on there. But I wanted to jump into Russia, Ukraine. And the meeting, I'm filming this on the 18th. The meeting with Putin was yesterday. We literally we being Americans, Trump specifically, the government literally rolled out the red carpet for Putin, treated him really, really well, really, really nice. A lot of, to me, pomp and circumstance. But in any event, the meeting with EU and NATO and Zelensky is today. Now, all I can tell you and assess this is based on what we see on the news. And we know the news is compromised. The job of the media is to direct the thinking of the masses and direct attention and so forth and so on. But from what we've seen on the news, they rolled out the red carpet. Basically, they had their meeting and so forth and so on. And basically, so undoubtedly these actions are going to and have enraged a lot of people. We have to remember that Russia's still the perceived enemy. There's a perception that Trump is favoring Russia, that there's an alliance. I mean, I'm not saying it's true. That's just a perception that's out there. But my question is, could it be intentional that they're overdoing it, going overboard, welcoming Putin into our country to really enrage people, to distract them, to get them angry, and then fighting each other? I don't have the answer. So you guys write down in the comments what the answer to that is. Is that a ploy to distract people, or is there a different reason for that? Meanwhile, the fighting continues in earnest. In fact, from what I've heard, again, this is what I see on the news, so mainstream news, that fighting has escalated during these peace talks and these peace processes. That's worth noting. And no deal was reached as a result of the summit. Not that I expected one to be reached. In fact, I'll get into predictions about that in a second. So what the news is saying is they had their meeting. It went well enough. The meeting is today. Certain events happened. People are upset about it. But what Spirit tells me paints a different picture, I have to say, and I'm going to dive into that. This is from my guides, and for me, part of what I do channeling. I'm a professional medium. A lot of you know that. And when I work, I'll often pick up the names and birthdays of the spirits, give my clients information that only they could know. And point of me saying this isn't to boast or anything, but just to say when I'm working with different levels of spirit, I'm using the same skill set, meaning that what comes through is usually accurate. And granted, I have to be a clear vessel. I'm human. I'm not 100% above having any wants or prejudices or stuff like that. But I do my best to get out of the way and be a pure channel. So what I got from Spirit basically is, let me flip the page, is, and of course I trust Spirit and all that. But they'd say this whole thing was largely a show, basically. And a lot of people believe that, without the channeling, right? Meetings behind closed doors were done ahead of the Alaska Summit, whether that's online or whether they met in private or whatever. And then, so a lot of what was going to happen in the meeting, what they were telling me, was predetermined, basically. And a lot of it's for the benefit of the media and to create a certain public impression about what's going on, basically. And in the meeting, they do discuss the relevant topics for the record, but the results are largely predetermined. And a while ago, I had a vision. Some of you know this that have been watching this channel, that heads of state were meeting. I feel like I was in Ukraine. I was remote viewing, and there's U.S. representative, other countries, heads of state, also generals, And they weren't really talking about peace. They were talking about the progression of war and how that was going to play out. So almost planning the steps of war. Now we know, of course, remember that war drives global power. It's profitable, so it drives the flow of money and stuff like that. It creates alliances. It changes the structure of world power, financial structure of the world, all that kind of stuff, basically. So it is a tool for leveraging control, basically. So on that note, also the majority of wars are fought on the cyber battlefield. So a lot of this is happening through cyber attacks and stuff like this. And on that note, expect 2, if not 3 major cyber attacks to happen over the next 2 to 3 months, targeting the government and financial systems. And I do believe that the reason for that is to be able to implement more control over the internet by the governments or the powers that control the government, more AI espionage and stuff like that. I have that written in my notes somewhere where, this is 2 or 3 major cyber attacks on governments, finance, to tighten control over the internet, adding additional AI surveillance. So those are the words I was looking for. So it's largely orchestrated, possibly even fake from what I'm receiving. But unfortunately, the bombing is real. The suffering, the deaths are real. So what we need to do is send a lot of prayer energy and a lot of love to everybody in that conflict and everywhere else in the world that's going through it, basically. And moving right along. And let's work towards raising the vibration so that this can end in a sane and fair way and nobody else gets hurt. Also know that the ascended beings are in sensitive positions in world government now, whether they're extraterrestrial beings, ascended masters in human form. So there's been an infiltration of higher consciousness within these archaic government systems that are aimed at controlling the masses at the benefit of a minute few at the detriment of a great many. So it's happening. The change is happening. We are coming into a higher vibration in humanity, and it's going to be okay, but we still have to get there, right? So, so what else? Helping change the currents of our evolution, and the archaic warring and other patterns of the old Earth and the primitive mindset on Earth. So there is a mission, and there are ascended beings that are working with us to help us to evolve and to get past this. Now remember, August from the past forecast was very conducive to peace and diplomacy. We talked about that in the August forecast. So I do believe things are heading in that direction, even if a lot of it's show. And we can add collective prayer to help facilitate that. Right now, I'm feeling that around late October for a peace deal to be finalized. But numerologically, actually, September's more favored than October. So it could be sooner. When I get impressions, timelines are very hard to predict. Sometimes I get the right timing, sometimes I don't, basically. And a lot of psychics will tell you the same thing. But I believe we're heading in that direction anyway. And again, it may all be pre-orchestrated. But as a side note, the European Union and NATO's are supporting the show, maybe, or act out of an alignment for Ukraine and the European Union. So, that was kind of added on as we went on. And could be like a subtle snub of the U.S. and what some see as an alliance forming with U.S. and Russia and other nations, kind of creating this divide in the world, basically, that would support a World War III agenda. But, I think we're going to fall short of that. But, again, we are in kind of a world, a global conflict now. So anyway, Middle East and Israel moved towards peace by year's end was another thing that came through. And I recently, just yesterday, in fact, remote view into Gaza, and I saw military action, some against civilians, and it just, to be honest, it was too upsetting, and I lost the connection. But there's just a lot of atrocities that are going on, unfortunately. So please, let's send our prayer and our love. And here on the channel, whenever not every live stream, but in most of our live stream, we do some group prayer and energy work near the end of that. So if you want to come to the live streams, you can support our efforts to bring more peace and to ease the suffering. Yeah, Israel, Gaza, all over the world. A lot of it we don't hear on the news, but it's massive. And so anyway, also new info is about to surface about around the January 6th event. So I think some news is coming out around that. As per my original prediction, Trump will likely not be in office come, I think under 2 years at this point, basically. Now, again, that's fluid. A lot can happen between now and then, and I'm not speaking from any political perspective. This is just information that comes to me that I give to you. So please don't shoot the messenger. I promise this is not political bias that you're hearing. You're hearing messages from Spirit right now. So that said, however, around late September, there could be dismissal based upon things that I picked up on the summer and the August forecast, not written in stone, when I saw events around now leading to possible dismissal. So when I did the forecast, I was seeing around middle August, which is now, it's already the 18th, events happening now that could lead to dismissal around 6 weeks after that time. Not necessarily, could is the operative word. Now, could that relate to how Russia-Ukraine is being handled, or new things surfacing around the January 6th insurrection, the Epstein reveals? Though, having said all that, health would remain my primary concern, so it's something to keep an eye on. I do think some news around Epstein files does surface around September that could implicate high-ranking politicians on both sides, not just Democrat to Republican. In general, corruption is revealed, especially in terms of government operations. So I think that's going to be big in this and other countries. Politicians primarily, much of it in the U.S., but other countries as well as new insights into pandemic, misinformation that may have harmed people. So a lot of corruption or a lot of cover-ups are going to be surfacing. It's already started, so I think that's going to accelerate, and especially in those areas. Now, it's really, really interesting times. Shocking reveals are going to follow. Also, an Alaska fjord. Oh, I don't know if you heard that there's a fjord in Alaska that had a 1,600-foot tsunami. 1,650 feet, I think, was the measurement. This was from, I forgot if it might have been either a landslide or a glacial slide that produced a huge wave in a fjord. It was a largely uninhabited region, but that's worth noting. Also, and on the all right, we talked about that. Australia also just had, in Queensland, I think, just had a 5.3 magnitude earthquake. We talked about New Zealand in that area. That can include out towards Fiji, that whole area getting very, very active. That could be the next major earthquake on the planet. Also, the San Andreas to off of Oregon to Alaska also is highly suspect. South America, too. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where. And new sky anomalies, UFO interactions increasing, basically. And I feel like something new is going to be discovered very soon. That's, again, a new anomaly, basically. Now, 3-Eye Atlas, that's big super comet you've been hearing more and more about. I decided to do a little bit remote viewing, and what I got, it's very powerful energy, and what I got was that it's alive. And before you laugh at me, let me explain what I mean by that. It's alive, according to my attempts to remote view it. It may be some kind of life form or biologically based craft from either distant in this galaxy or another galaxy. And I'll try to get more information on that soon. And it could still be a some kind of a space rock that we've never encountered. But this is what I felt when I connected to the energy. Again, it's just based on my feeling, and I'll try to get more information soon. So it's a quick stand, but that's really all I could pick up on. So I don't think it's really a comet. I believe it's conscious on some level, but it may be a life form that's so different and distant from our own. It'd be hard for us to relate to it, basically. And again, it could be bringing us information or it could be gathering information. My first impression was it was some kind of a probe, maybe unoccupied probe that got launched possibly before our solar system was even born, basically. So it could be very, very old. And again, more information through signs and through channels such as myself will be surfacing in the months and maybe years to come, or maybe even weeks to come. So other than that, yeah, I think there's going to be more spikes in UFO activity, ascension and energy activation. We're also seeing a lot of spikes in the Schumann resonance that may be signs that higher energies are affecting the earth fields that affect human consciousness. But also, there's a lot of misperception about the Schumann resonance, which is a low vibrational hum that permeates all life and all things on earth. It's resonant with our brainwave patterns, amongst other things. So a lot of people see these spikes and automatically think that there's some, strange phenomena going on that's part of the ascension, but there's actually natural phenomena that could create spikes in the Schumann resonance also. But it's a very useful tool for gauging cosmic energy if you know how to read it. So for that reason, I did a whole video on that, which I'll post over here to teach you how to read that and separate the facts from the myth. And over here will be the first part of this video where I talk more about what's going on in the San Andreas and more insight into the Trump presidency, more detail about that. So hopefully you find this helpful. Please like the video, comment, and if you'd like to see more of these videos come up on your home feed, subscribe to the Medium channel.